Empaths are highly prone to alcohol use disorder for these reasons. This is a big area for not just alcohol use disorder, but also addiction in general, specifically and especially the opioids, alcohol, benzodiazepines, gabapentinoids, all the same types of addictive prone substances and behaviors as the highly sensitive person. This is, I'm still learning more and more about the similarities and differences between these two traits, which a lot of people kind of interchangeably call each other when they're actually different, similar but different. So, for example, I'm a moderate, highly sensitive person and a moderate empath. A lot of the clients I have, almost all of them, across the board, at least 8 out of 10 or more, have either the highly sensitive person trait and or the empath trait. And then probably maybe 3 out of 10 of the clients I've worked with and or have the high sensation seeking trait. But this one, I view alcohol use disorder and opioid use disorder primarily. These are such heavy duty painkillers. Alcohol and opioids kill pain, psychological and physical, so well and so quickly, so consistently. And empaths are only about 1 to 2% of the population. So versus highly sensitive people are 15 to 20%. This is so much more rare. So it can lead to way more, not just the negative consequences or the flip side of the coin. This is a double-sided coin or a double-edged sword where just like the high sensitivity of your sensory processing, this high empathy, higher than normal, in some cases, much higher than normal empathy, how people can want to numb it out due to the negative consequences of it and also the alienation from most other people not being like them. The best definition that I could find of an empath comes from Dr. Childs. She says, quote, "An empath is a person who has the ability to feel what others are feeling and understand what others are feeling. They're also known to feel feelings on a deeper level and take on the feelings of others." Whoa, that is a whole lot in just 2 short sentences. She's talking about a person who has the ability to feel what others are feeling, understand those feelings, and take on and absorb the feelings and experience feelings in general from themselves and others on a deeper level. That is nuts. Look at how many times the word feeling is in there. Ooh, yuck, feelings. In our culture, at least the culture I grew up in, I think most of you too, at least for males, it was, suppress your feelings and put on your big boy pants and, suck it up, all that kind of stuff. And then for women too, growing up, females and adolescents and growing up, they got it a lot too, depending on their parents and depending on, their friends and the adults in their lives. A lot of women got this as well. Kind of suck it up. Don't be so emotional. Don't have such deep feelings. Bury that. So we probably, a lot of us saw our parents do it, suppress their feelings and suck it up. So we learned how to do that too. And then in all the movies and films, a lot of the time it was the same. So it's really, in the past it was valued a lot more. The empaths and or the highly sensitive people back in the hunter-gatherer tribal times, they were usually the shamans, the medicine people, the healers of the tribes and of the villages and of the groups. Back in the certain times too, they were the witches that got burned. Really, they probably weren't witches at all. They were probably just empaths or highly sensitive people empaths. Empathy is the ability to sense other people's emotions, coupled with the ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling. So if you go back to the Middle Ages, or the 1500s, 1600s, the 1200s, the 1800s, the 1700s, the 1900s, And if only 1 to 2% of the population has this ability to this heightened sense, all humans have the ability to have empathy, but it's a spectrum. And, sociopaths don't have empathy. And empaths have a lot of empathy. So, since they're so rare, and back in those days, they would view, superstition, they would think they were witches or had these evil powers, because how can someone sense and know what someone else is feeling and thinking, even in some cases? That's like magic back then. Now we know it's probably due to mirror neurons, among other things. But empathy is the ability to sense other people's emotions, coupled with the ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling. I put a question mark on the bullet point that says 1 to 2% of the population because it seems like it might be getting a little bit higher. I feel like this new generation, Gen Z, I feel like it might be 3% or 4% of the population because of them, but I could be wrong. This is a common human trait, human ability. If you take something I really highly recommend, if you haven't taken it yet, it's called the Big Five Personality Test. I took this a long time ago, and once you come up with that, it gives you your results. Empathy is one of them, one of the big five traits. It scores things like conscientiousness, openness, intelligence, empathy. So an empath is somebody that has a higher empathy than normal. Research says this is due to mirror neurons. So we have these neurons in us that are called mirror neurons, and they help us to have these empath abilities, be able to read someone's body language cues. Yes, what they're saying with their verbal communication too, but most communication is nonverbal. I think perhaps 93%. It's been a while since I've looked at that, but most communication is nonverbal. And so this is a really cool ability with these extra mirror neurons, be able to look at someone's body language. The former hypnotherapist Milton Erickson was a master hypnotherapist. Most people didn't know this, even to this day, but he was like a super deep empath. So he probably had so many mirror neurons that he was able to feel the feelings of his patient and understand the feelings and even the thoughts and the experiences of his patients. Sociopaths, I was mentioning this earlier, they lack empathy. They don't have the mirror neurons. In fact, if you look at the brain of a sociopath, I think they're missing a whole entire area of the brain that is associated with empathy. Narcissists, they are usually low in empathy, or have no empathy, but not to the degree that sociopaths do. And they don't have that whole region of the brain kind of turned off as well. This is found while the highly sensitive person trait is equal numbers of males and females. With the empath trait, it's found more often in females. And on the Big Five personality test, too. The statistics with that also show that, females are just, on average, usually have more empathy than men. It's not always the case, of course. Then there's also the men that are extremely empathic and some women that are sociopaths with no empathy. But as a whole, it's found more often in females, this empath trait and empathy in general. Many empaths are also HSPs, but the traits are both different. This lady, Dr. Judith Orloff, has the best differentiating description of the difference between these I've found. So here it is. Oh, that coffee's gone. That's so sad. Delicious. All right. She says, as a psychiatrist and an empath, I often get asked, quote, what is the difference between empaths and highly sensitive people? Following are the similarities and areas of overlap. I also devote a section of the Empath's Survival Guide to this important distinction. So the highly sensitive person is my favorite book on the HSP trait, although there's many books that I haven't read, and I've read several others besides the one I just mentioned. This is my favorite one for the empath trait, although there's also other ones that I love, like sensitive is the new strong, and many that I haven't read, of course. But this one is really, really good. I think it has 4.6 or 4.7 stars on Amazon and lots of reviews. Empaths share all the traits of what Dr. Elaine Aron has called highly sensitive people, or HSPs, who we covered last week. These include a low threshold for stimulation, the need for alone time, sensitivity to light, sound, and smell, and aversion to large groups. It also takes highly sensitive people longer to wind down after a busy day, since their ability to transition from high stimulation to being quiet is slower. Highly sensitive people are typically introverts, while empaths can be introverts or extroverts, although most are introverts. We went over the statistics last week. It's about 70% introverts for highly sensitive people, 30% extroverts. With empaths, it's way more than that. There's hardly any extroverts, to my understanding, that are empaths. But there are some. Empaths share a highly sensitive person's love of nature and quiet environments, their desire to help others, and their rich inner life. However, empaths take the experience of the highly sensitive person much further. I'm going to read the last paragraph again. One can be both, as many highly sensitive people are also empaths. If you think about this distinction in terms of an empathic spectrum, empaths are on the far end. Highly sensitive people are a little further in. People with strong empathy who are not HSPs or empaths are in the middle. And narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths who have empath deficient disorders, EDD, not erection deficient disorders, empath deficient disorders, that's a different disorder, different medicine and treatment, are at the far opposite end. Here's the empathic spectrum. Check it out. So empaths are on the far right of the empathic spectrum with the most empath. Then HSPs that are not empaths are a little bit to the left of that. Loving empathic people who are not HSPs or empaths are a little bit to the left of that. That's kind of in the middle. And then going to the left of the spectrum, you have the narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, Machiavellian, these people with these brain regions messed up in some way. Here's the empath test, one of several. I think it's the best one. It's by Dr. Orloff, And calculating your results on this one, that's a clickable link per usual. It takes you right to the test. It has a little bit of how to calculate your results on the right on this image right here. As you can see, if you answer yes to 1 to 5 questions, you're probably at least partially an empath. If you get 6 to 10 questions, you have moderate empathic tendencies. 11 to 15 means you have strong empathic tendencies. 15 or more, and that means you are a full-blown empath, full-blown. In relationship to alcohol use disorder and addiction in general, substance use disorder in general, or addiction in general. Since empaths can feel, absorb, and understand the feelings, emotions, and experiences of other humans and potentially animals, this can often lead to overwhelm, overstimulation, heightened negative emotions states like anxiety, fear, depression, sadness, anger, and way more. For many people, almost the full gambit of negative emotionality and neuroticism. Since alcohol can quickly, legally, inexpensively, and consistently numb, N as in Nancy, U, M as in Matt, B as in boy, numb these negative states, like one would use numbing back pain ointment to numb their tight muscles. Alcohol can numb the empathy trait. This is a superpower in the right situations. Having the empath trait, like a full-blown empath or even empathic tendencies that are strong, or mild. Even in this modern civilization we live in, even having mild to moderately empathic tendencies, but especially a full-blown empath, this ability to numb with alcohol, with Netflix, with red wine, with Hershey's milk chocolate, with Ben and Jerry's, with Amazon Prime, with nicotine, with sedative drugs, with all sorts of different things. It can be a constant need to numb. Unfortunately, it's like Andrew Carnegie said in Napoleon Hill in 1908, quote, "The man who tries to escape fear, worry, or sorrow by the use of alcohol meets with precisely the same experience as the man who tries to get out of quicksand by trying to pull himself out. Each effort sinks him a little deeper," end quote.